Hi everybody, I'm here outside your classroom and it is spring and the gardens are growing and they're pretty quiet and sad without y'all. We sure do miss you. And I just wanted to give you a tour to catch you up on what's been going on. So I have planted some mint in Tilly's enclosure. Mint is a spreader and I'm hoping that it will spread and make this enclosure nice and healthy and green. Now, as I was digging, I found somebody who was living in the ground. So we don't think about it very often, even though we learn about it in school. We kind of forget that underneath our feet there are animals living, and they could be hibernating if it's winter time, which means they just try to stay, very calm. There he goes. He's afraid. Don't want to scare him. I'm just going to try to observe from a distance so that I can learn about him and see how close I can get without touching him or scaring him. Now remember, if he's been hibernating all winter, he might not have a lot of fat reserves or a bunch of energy stored away because he maybe hasn't eaten for a long time. So I don't want to scare him and make him panic. If he starts running around, he might not have eaten enough in a long time to be able to survive running around and expending all that energy like that. So I'm just going to back away and let him go about his toad business. The enclosure will hopefully be all green when you come back in the fall. We've got the mint that we've just planted. And we also have some swamp mallow right here, or marshmallow. That is the plant that marshmallows were originally made out of the root. And it is a type of native hibiscus, which means it has a beautiful flower that's packed with vitamin C, and we will let Tilly the turtle eat that when she comes back to school. So you guys have done a great job at building this enclosure. Whenever you decide to get a pet, you always want to make sure that you have enough space for them and everything that they'll need to be healthy. So, in fact, the coronavirus was originally found in animals that were being kept in cages too close together. They were being crowded into the cages and they were spreading disease among each other, and it wasn't healthy. And then eventually it spread to humans. So whenever you decide to keep an animal as a pet, it's a big decision that you want to take very seriously and make sure you do it right. Now you guys have done a great job. This is an amazing enclosure for a turtle to live in, and I can't wait for her to come back. And now we know she won't be alone because she's got a toad living with her. Now let's see what else we've got going on in your garden. We have rosemary. Rosemary always smells good. Let's go look in the rest of your garden. So your garden is the sensory garden. This right here is the herb portion. Right here we have oregano. If you were here, you would be smelling this too. Smell oh so good. And we have lots and lots of mint. You can make tea with this, or feed it to your turtle, or just eat it straight. So that's the smell portion. We have basil, oregano, mint, more rosemary. Over here is the taste portion of the garden. This is a cabbage, still young. That's why it doesn't have a big round ball, or what they call a head, that you see when you buy it at the store. But hopefully soon. Here's some clover. All these clovers have 3 leaves, but I'm still looking for my 4-leaf clover. They are blooming. Sorry you guys left before they bloomed. Let's see. Does anyone know what this is? Some more. This is lettuce. Now lettuce is easy to identify because it has this bright green or chartreuse leaves, even when it's tiny and young and just popping out of the ground. That helps us know that it's lettuce. Now lettuce is a winter crop, and we can still eat it now that it's spring, but when it gets too hot, it's going to start to fade away and eventually die. Most crops don't last forever. They have seasons, and so now's the season to eat it before it gets too bitter. Plants are very aware of what temperature it is. All the time they keep track of the temperature, and that's how they know when it's time to send up their flowers, when it's time to come out of the ground if they're a seed, and they will change according to what the temperature is. So now that it's warming up, the lettuce doesn't taste quite so sweet. It's a little bit bitter. That means that it's getting a little bit too hot. So I couldn't figure out why our lettuce was so bitter. Then I thought maybe it was the soil we were growing it in, but I read that that means it's too hot. So there's always things to learn. No matter how much you learn about gardening, there's always new things to learn. And even if you're going into the same garden every day, there's always new things happening every day. Different animals and wildlife visiting. And so gardening is never boring. Does anyone know what this is? This is lavender. Lavender is native to Portugal, and you guys learned about it when you studied Portugal for International Night. People say that the smell makes you feel calm and serene and content. Over here we have some broccoli. It hasn't made the part that you recognize as broccoli yet. The part that we eat is actually the bud of the flower. So first it will send out a bud, and then if we don't eat it, that bud will turn into a bunch of little yellow flowers. But it hasn't happened yet. We'll have to come back and keep waiting for that. Let's see what else we have. The magnolia tree is happy. You can see because it's bright green. Sometimes if a plant isn't happy, if it's too hot or too dry, it might turn yellowish or brown. But this plant is nice and happy and green. Over here we have your loquat tree. It doesn't have any loquat fruits yet because it's too young. It's only a few years old, so not all plants make fruit right away, and sometimes you just have to be patient and wait, just like everybody else has to wait before it's old enough, before it can do everything it wants to do in life. So someday we're going to have some loquat fruits if we keep taking good care of this loquat tree. Let's go over to the other side of your yard. We have a jasmine vine, some verbena flower. Nobody's moved into the bluebird house yet, but I suspect they will. Let's look at the succulent garden. Alright. We have some creeping thyme. They call it that because they say it kind of creeps along and spreads. You can see that the seeds have fallen on the ground, and so it's creeping along the ground now. That's good because we can pick this thyme and put it on our food. We have all different kinds of succulents. The reason we've planted succulents here is because the garden bed is small compared to if you were put in the ground. So if you were a plant and you were in this box, your roots wouldn't have a whole lot of space compared to if you were put in the ground. And without that much soil, things can get dry really quick. So we had to put plants that are okay if they're dry, like a cactus. So cactuses have special adaptations to help them survive in the desert. So what is an adaptation? It's something special about you that helps you survive a situation in your environment. So you can see that this cactus has folds in it. See how it goes like this? Almost like folds. What that does is that allows the plant to expand if it rains and fill itself up with water. And then if it's dry, it slowly shrinks back to its original size. But it's kind of like having an adjustable body where you can hold more water if you have more water, or hold less water if there isn't as much water. So that is one unique thing about a cactus, and that's why animals would be really interested in getting their hands on a cactus if they were thirsty, except, ouch, the cactus has a strategy for that too. It has all those spikes because it knows that other animals are going to want that water that it's so good at storing. So everything that plants have, there's usually a reason. They're very good at surviving in the places that they live. And succulents are extra special in that you can just take them, break them off like this. That has a little bit of a root, but even if it doesn't have a little bit of a root, you can sort of bury it in the ground and it will grow roots. Not every plant can do that. Most plants would die if you just broke them like that and stuck them in the ground. But succulents are special, and that one will turn into a whole nother plant. That's how I made all this happen. One little bit at a time, until we had all these succulents growing and prospering, proliferating, and just being all around happy. to be alive. This is called the pencil plant because it does kind of look like a pencil. A lot of plants will turn red when they're a little bit stressed out. You may have learned that green is the color of chlorophyll, and chlorophyll will make food from the sunlight, but it also needs water to make that food. And if it doesn't have water, some of the other pigments besides chlorophyll will show up instead, and those pigments are red. And so oftentimes you'll see like leaves turning red in the fall right before they fall off. So even though it's beautiful, it's not always a good sign when your plants turn red. So I'm going to probably water this pencil plant after I say goodbye. What do we have here? Another cactus. This one is a little bit different. This one has some red too, but I don't think it's because it's stressed. I think it's because it's new growth. So sometimes new growth is different looking than the older growth. So if you look at this cactus, you can see the history of its life. So this part here is 3 years old. This brown almost looks like a trunk of a tree. This part here is 2 years old. This yellowish part. This part here is 3 years old. And this part here is only a few days old. That wasn't there a few days ago. So you can read about its life by paying attention and looking closely. And if you see here, it's having little babies. If I pull off one of the babies and stick it in the ground, maybe we'll get a new cacti. Now I didn't have to pull it off. Eventually it would have fallen off by itself, and that's how it has more plants and creates more of itself. So we can do things to help the plants and animals, but really they don't need us. They know exactly what they're doing, and they can do it all by themselves. This is called ice plant because sometimes when the sun is shining, it looks sparkly. It's a little bit cloudy today, so you can't see the sparkles, but you can see that it has some really cool texture that helps create that sparkly look when the sun shines. Very cool. Our pear plant is leafing out, or tree, I should say. It is deciduous, which means it drops all of its leaves in the wintertime. Some people think it's died, but it hasn't. It just goes dormant for the winter, kind of like the toad, kind of like hibernation for an animal. And then when spring comes, it puts out new leaves and starts all over again. So there's always new beginnings in nature and all kinds of reasons for hope. And I hope that this gives you guys some good things to think about while we are separated from one another, and that when you come back in the fall, there will be some pears on this tree and we can enjoy them together. Can't wait to see you then. Bye-bye.